Welcome to the revolution. In the world of conservative entertainment, there has been rising tensions between two of the biggest players in the game. That is Steven Crowder and the Daily Wire. The Daily Wire being owned, or at least ran, the face of the Daily Wire is Ben Shapiro, right? You have people like Candace Owens, you have, Clavin, you have Brett Cooper, you have, all of the mainstream, the largest influencers in the conservative space come from or are some way associated with the Daily Wire. The few that aren't are like Tim Pool, and that's about it. Steven Crowder, right? Those are like the two really, really big, huge, massive platforms that aren't in some way associated with the Daily Wire, which I think is awesome. I think it's really cool what the Daily Wire is trying to do with the Daily Wire Plus, coming out with movies with people like Gina Carano, right? There's so much positivity coming out of there that I was like really disappointed to see this come up, right? This is not a conversation I want to take a side in, right? I'm in full support of the Daily Wire. I really like Ben Shapiro's content. I love Jordan Peterson. Brett Cooper's great. Her social media content and everything is like top notch. Candace Owens, obviously one of the most intelligent and well-spoken people in the conservative space. The list goes on, right? The What is the Woman documentary, all of it is incredible stuff. So, and been a fan of Steven Crowder for quite some time. I love his content, his comedy, everything. So like, this is not something where I really want to like wear a jersey in this. Now I have opinions about all of it and I'm going to tell you all of them anyways. But it hurts me to have to even, choose sides here, which I'm not exactly doing, but I'll tell you what I find wrong and right with both sides of the argument. And you can distinguish for yourself what you think my total overarching beliefs are. But I don't think I have an exact side that I believe in here. Anyways, so this week, Steven Crowder came out and publicly accused the Daily Wire of designing their influencers' contracts to toe the line of big tech censorship policies, or at the very least have their pay be docked for every single violation against them, right? So if you have a YouTube platform and you get demonetized, if you have a Facebook and you get a strike against you from YouTube, or a demonetized from Facebook, or you get a violation from Instagram, every single one of those things has a like stepping percentage that you lose of your income as a result of being demonetized. Right now, I think there's something to be said about that, and we'll get into that in just a moment, but let's go on. In a video posted on his channel, Crowder stated that big tech is in bed with big con being conservative, right? So talking about the Daily Wire is obviously the biggest conservative platform out there, right? So, and he went on to criticize an offer that he received from the Daily Wire without specifically naming the company, right? See, the next day, the Daily Wire CEO, Jeremy Boring, posted a response video in which he confirmed that the company had initially offered Crowder a whopping $50 million contract, but also claimed that Crowder was had misrepresented what was in the offer. Right, Boring also denied that the Daily Wire was working with big tech companies to censor conservative voices, and stated that the company has also been a victim of big tech's alleged censorship, obviously with all the people that you're talking about here. Right, so he read the contract verbatim, right? Boring is the ex or president or vice president of the Daily Wire, right? He was, and this is one of the bigger problems here is that Crowder is like friends with these people, and he came out in this big like gotcha moment and released a recording that he had a conversation with Boring, and Boring said something about, it sounded to me like the discussion went like this, like they were talking about how Crowder had a problem with the clause in the contract, and it wasn't a contract, it was a term sheet, and the difference between a term sheet and a contract is that one's binding and to be signed, the term sheet is to start the negotiations, right? So in the term sheet that they originally gave to Crowder, which generally ends up causing negotiations, not recorded phone calls and released social media stuff. The term sheet said, what those stepping down demonetization percentages were for his pay of that $50 million if he got demonetized on any of those platforms or strikes or whatever, right? And that's the problem with this, is that those strikes mean that you have to watch what you say, Right now, there is a part of the Daily Wire Plus that's coming out where you can kind of negate that issue, right? The hope is that they replace YouTube with the Daily Wire Plus, I would assume, right? And in that case, hopefully they wouldn't have to watch their mouths and their opinions. But at the very least, what happens is the Daily Wire takes on these smaller, younger influencers and brings them up through their platform, right? That's the idea, at least. So they take these contracts, they give them to the person, they pay them a salary, and then they take ownership of all of their content, right? All of the videos, all the podcasts, costs and advertisements in space, and they give you a salary, let you grow your brand, and then, eventually your contract needs to be renewed, and hopefully you can, renew it at a really nice millions of dollar contract like they were offering Crowder to begin with. And so where Crowder had a problem with that is he felt like if they're doing the same thing to up and coming influencers, right? Saying that, what about that young person that they're going to be hiring to bring up through the ranks? And, if they're going to be, have to watch everything they say and or fear getting their percentages paid, because people were like kind of pissed that he was even upset when they're offering him $50 million over 4 years. Crowder went back and asked for $140 million in a pretty interesting way of negotiation, tried to get them to immediately triple the amount that they were offering him. But anyway, so that was the term sheet. That was what he had a problem with. And then he came out and said, and released a recording, right? Crowder basically said that the feud started with these two figures when the large-scale divisions, right? While Crowder accuses them of betraying conservative principles, right? The principle of freedom of speech, of not holding back what you're thinking, and not having to give in to big tech censorship. Right? Now, despite the tensions of the disagreement, right? I think the biggest thing here needs to be the freedom of speech aspect, right? We need to maintain on the right side, at least to the anti-left side of things, the anti-woke liberal ideology, that freedom of speech above all, right? So I get Crowder's point in that. I get why he came out and had a problem with this, but I don't get his approach in the way that he recorded a phone call with a friend and then released this gotcha clip. What the clip said, Steven Crowder recorded the clip, and in the clip you see them kind of discussing the thing that I just talked about, which is the docking of pay based on percentages and if you get a violation from social media platforms. And Crowder released a clip of him talking about how they go about that salary way and say, that's how we do it. We bring them on and they're wage slaves and they can grow their brand and build a following and then go off and be famous, basically, right? That's what we do. We bring them on, give them a salary. If we think that they can make great content, and then we let them flourish later, we allow them to build a platform while making money at the same time, instead of out here bootstrapping it like your boy, trying to make it happen without anybody. So Crowder released the clip of him saying wage slaves. He slowed it down a bunch of times. Wage slaves, wage slaves. And it was supposed to be this big gotcha moment. Now, I understand what he means by wage slave. Wage slave is not like this ridiculously insulting term. It just means that you are slave to the wages that you're making in order to meet your bills, right? I understand that concept. It's not this crazy, idea that Crowder was trying to play to his base and make it seem like Boring was insulting all of these influencers on these types of salary contracts. I don't really see much wrong with what he said in the recording. I don't at all. I don't see any reason that it should have been this big gotcha moment. I don't see any reason that Crowder should have thought this was going to drive a ton of interest in his debate with these people. Right. So I don't agree with it. It seems wrong to me that Crowder, to begin with, was recording a phone call with somebody he considered a friend. Boring came out and said in the tweet, if I recorded it, I would have released the part where we talked about his kids and buying and how Christmas went and buying diapers for his nephew or son or something like that. Right. He's basically saying man, I feel stupid because he was recording my phone calls all along, right? And these negotiations that had happened months ago. It wasn't like this was a super recent thing. And what Tim Pool found out live while on an episode with Candace Owens discussing this was that, from one of his audience members commenting, was that the big say like whatever the URL that he had, like say no to Big Con or something like that, .com that he registered was registered 12 days before the negotiations like fell through, or so before something happened that caused him to make this move. So what that led everybody to believe is that this was calculated, right? That was like Candace Owens' position, was that, he's only doing this to make money. She called him a bad person. She said that, he burned all these bridges with all these people, and now he's like off on an island on his own, and now he's trying to build a following on his own platform because everybody said no to him at the amount of money that he was asking for, the 140 million over 4 years or whatever. So understandable. That seems frustrating to me. That seems like kind of shady that you would record a conversation with somebody you considered a friend if that's what happened. And then kind of weird for him to play this like gotcha clip that kind of really didn't have much to do with the actual negotiations that he had problems with. It seemed to me like he would have been better off coming out and actually having a discussion about how bad the contract clause hurts the cause of the right or libertarian movements that are happening right now. Because if I have to fear YouTube's strikes for my family to be fed, then I have to watch what I'm saying every single time I speak on the microphone, right? And that changes the way that if you're making $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year or whatever Brett Cooper or somebody who's newer like that is making a few $100,000, I would assume that that money is important to you. If you're going to get docked 20% of your pay, that's going to significantly impact you, where you could get down to like only 20% of your pay if you get demonetized on several platforms. So if you're making like $200,000, $400,000 a year, and you get docked 80% of that, then you're making what, like 40 grand? Like that would be atrocious, right? $80,000 a year for the type of work that they're doing and the reach that they have. Like that's crazy. And so I get that, right? It makes sense that there would be, some type of push towards trying to have these contracts not include something about YouTube censorship or Instagram violations or anything like that. I also get that the Daily Wire is a business who is expecting the monetization of their shows to pay for the salary of the person who they're paying to own their content of, right? So it is definitely an incentive to self-censor on one side of it. And the second side of it is that from a business perspective, it's kind of like a necessary evil in today's world, at least until the Daily Wire Plus gets to where it needs to be, to where it's generating enough revenue to pay for influencers to come in and build an audience specifically on their platform and not the ones like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of that, right? So I see both sides of this. I don't know who's in the right and who's in the wrong. I do know that I don't necessarily agree with the way that Steven Crowder came out and did this like gotcha moment recording. I don't think that that was really the right move, especially if he was a friend, right? And I also kind of disagree with the way that he burned all these bridges in hopes of building his own platform, because the whole movement that is going on here, freedom of speech, freedom of choice, freedom of religion, right? But the political movement that we're hoping for is the anti-woke, anti-censorship movement, right? And so on one side of it, again, I get why this would be frustrating for somebody negotiating a contract, trying to make this movement move along and be better, right? But I also get the business perspective of the Daily Wire. I don't know. I'd be interested to see what you guys think. Comment whatever on the videos here. Comment on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, go join the YouTube. If you're not on the YouTube, I post the video episodes every single week. All right. You can go to my link tree at any of the social medias. You can go to the Substack. It will all be linked on there, redpillrevolution.substack.com or redpillrevolution.co. I will be updating the website here over the next week or two. And we'll be starting to put out articles and blog posts and news articles that I'm going to be writing up for you guys and distributing them through the Substack as well. So make sure you sign up there. All right. Now, as far as this situation goes, I don't think this is good for the free speech movement. Although Brett Cooper did come out and say that, Brett Cooper is, I think, 22. Phenomenal. Really like her content. She does a great job at obviously like she's very, very sharp. Her content on social media is very well done. Her lives, everything, she does a really good job at it. You know, all of the influencers at the Daily Wire are like top notch, and so that's why I don't think that this is good, right? This overall like tension. Now, this is probably the most drama we've had in the conservative party, at least since like Trump was in office. So it is an interesting time to be, you know, not on the left side of things. But Brett Cooper came out and said that this was not in her contract because one thing that Candace Owens said is that she had a problem with the fact that Steven Crowder specifically talked about young and upcoming influencers, and there's only one young and upcoming influencer, and that's Brett Cooper, right? She's 22, 21, 22 years old, maybe 23, I don't know, but right around there. And she, you know, she said, which is crazy to me, that she had like 7,000 followers last year at this time, and now she has millions, which, like, you know, Daily Wire, call your boy. I'll jump on there, take Steven Crowder's place. And yeah, if you want to pay me $50 million, I'll be happy to, I won't even talk about anything that you don't want me to talk about. I won't even bring it up. I'll try not to blink. I'll do whatever you want. Just for 50 million, that's fine. I guess I'll do it. So Daily Wire, call your boy. I'm happy to take the $50 million contract, and I'll censor myself from literally saying anything you want me to. I'm happy to do it. Happy to do it. Call me up. You know, Austin@redpillrevolution.co. Send me an email. Anyways, but seriously, Brett Cooper said that this was not in her contract. Okay, she said that, you know, and that was something Candace Owens kind of took issue with, was that he was specifically kind of alluding to her contract. And she came out in a live video yesterday and said that's not in my contract. Sounds like she negotiated out of it, actually, which it also seems like Crowder could have actually negotiated his way out of it, like many of these other people did, but chose to, I don't know, do what he did instead. But it doesn't seem like all of the people on the Daily Wire actually have that sort of clause in there. So is it in all of the new ones? Maybe. I don't know. But it is definitely not a good look if we're trying to promote freedom of speech, if you're having to have your influencers self-censor, right? But for 50 million, maybe.